Namaste and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Sat means truth, Logos means a study or science, Sattology means a science of truth, a study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means the science of fake lie imagination or study of fake lie imagination. You have loved our videos. So, first of all, thank you for all the comments that you send. No comment is less important or more important, all are equally important. Uh, Today, we're going to talk about how, and we're going to get into the griha and positions of different stars and places from Mahabharata. Before that, I have a very, very special guest. I'll announce you. He's a researcher, Swami, and he's a Muni. You can call him a Raja Rishi also because he trains people to become kings. And he's also spearheading many movements in India who are making videos all over the place. And I won't release the name because he doesn't want to make it public, but generally he does that. And in the last show, I think he did say the name also, Prachyam. So without delay, let us welcome Shri Nilesh Nilkant Oak. Namaskar.
Namaskar, Aditya ji. Yes, and can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yes, there are no secrets. We have no secrets. So, yes, a lot of great stuff is happening. And without going into the details, I would also like to thank you for your help in enabling some of these things. So, thank you.
So one of the things comes in the faith theories, and all of us knew. So when you see the world, and my new book was Gold, Glory, and God. This was a mantra of the papal bull. So the other countries were civilized based on the faith. But if you look at the habits of those people, they were far more civilized than the people who came to civilize. Isn't it true? So the critical faith theory has always been in existence ever since the 6th century. What do you have to say on that?
Well, a lot of things actually, but I'll try to limit myself to a few specific ones, for example. So in humanities, first, number one, in humanities, when people talk of a theory, uh, for our listeners, for everyone, it's important to understand, for most part, 99% of the time, they are not talking of a theory in the sense it is used in the hard sciences. In the hard sciences, the emphasis is on the empirical evidence, emphasis is on finding exceptions, and you always begin with doing the purva paksha of whatever is out there before. And then you ask the question, what problem is not solved by this previous theory? And then you try to solve it. In order to solve, you propose a new theory. That's the process of science. In humanities, like say you're talking critical race theory or now critical faith theory, they start with the agenda. They don't start with the intention of understanding the world. No, they think, I mean, it's such a cocky attitude. They think they know exactly what they want to achieve. They have a specific agenda, and to achieve that agenda, to literally to fool people, they come up with whatever new construct, and they call it a theory. So that's difference number one. The second one, the second point that you mentioned is, isn't it true, or what are my thoughts, that many times when you see of this religious conversion, I mean, that's like a very blatant, very villainous outcome of that is of this all these theories is this conversion business. But so your point was like, so what about those people who came to convert around the world, to Europe and whatnot, and they converted people to an inferior faith, like going back to the faith theory? Isn't that the case? The answer is yes. But even some people may make this as a relative matter, and they can argue forever. That is possible. But even the very attitude of conversion itself is an inferior attitude. It's a one thing to say, you know what, I have got some interesting thoughts I would like to share with you, and it would be great if you understand them. Now, if somebody understands them and therefore the person likes it and therefore follows it, nothing wrong with it. In fact, every reason to do that. Like Bhagavad Puran talks about, Avadut Gita, like every person that you meet, you find something good, something better, something superior in that person. In principle, usually that is the case. And for that person, you should have a sincere desire to imbibe that attitude, imbibe that virtue from that person in your life. To that extent, he is your guru. That can be said about even all cultures. We can give that to any culture. Even a, diabolical culture, diabolical civilizational attitude we might see, even there we can also find something useful, and to that extent it is okay. But just outright, the very attitude of conversion, the very attitude of converting someone else to your viewpoint by pure force, by pure agenda, or by pure some crooked strategy itself is abominable. So, how can that be a civilization? So, the last third point, uh, I don't know exactly if that conversation happened or not, but it is at least quoted like this. A Western, either a priest, who was there in India to convert people to Christianity, again, another abominable thing, or a Western journalist, I forgot, but he was talking to Mahatma Gandhi, and he asked Gandhi, so what he thought of Western civilization. And Aditya ji, you might have heard this, and Gandhi's response, and it could be paraphrased in a few ways, but the one I have heard, or one of the version, Gandhi responded when this Western, either a conversion brigade guy asked, or journalist asked, what does Gandhi, or what did Gandhi think of Western civilization? And Gandhi just smiled and said, it would be a good idea, which is to say, where is the Western civilization? First you have to find it, first you have to create it, but it would be a good idea. So, he was saying it in a humorous and sarcastic sense. So, those are my 3 points, Aditya ji.
A good point made, because when you talk about the critical race theory and wokeism in the schools, but we don't talk about the faith theory, critical faith theory. Why there is a need to force change people, and the kind of mission atrocities that were done, 12 to 20,000 people per mission in California, 21 missions,
Mhm.
and with 7 to 8,000 children transferred to Christian parents so that
Hmm.
they can become Christians.
Yeah.
And today, most of the Native Americans, they are Christians.
Yeah. And my friend, just on that subject, my friend Desh Kapoor, he posted something in social media this morning. It is a statement of Bishop uh, Weil, something his name. This is from Canada. The statement made in 1895. And next time I'll try to bring that exact statement. But it's a See, if anyone, doesn't matter, but in the civilized world of today, of 21st century, in the East, West, North America, Europe, Africa, India, if someone reads that statement and still does not understand the impact and the viciousness of what you are just talking from the schools in America, but in Canada, this statement is made in 1895, by the way, where he said the idea behind bringing the Native Americans to the Christian schools there is to make, just like what Macaulay did in India, to make them feel inferior about their own existence, about their own culture, everything inferior. And when they, as they grow up, if they look back at their culture, they should feel horrified. I mean, it's a very explicit language that this bishop is using. Okay, in Canada, the statement was made in 1895. What is further surprising is that those schools, or that type of schools, continued in Canada until 1980s. So we are not talking one generation, we are talking of few generations of destructions. Of course, the physical torture, whatever they might have gone through, but the emotional tortures, and just the whole community is deracinated, right? The community is totally rooted out from their tradition. So that just I happened to read this morning from Desh Kapoor, my friend.
So thank you. And I think we can share the
All
presentation.
right, let me see. Yeah, I can share it. So I'll start sharing. So in the series that we are doing, and this is very important that we do this, Aditya ji, and I'm very glad we are getting a chance to do it here. um, Mahabharat, uh, it's one thing to simply say, okay, it happened in this particular year, But for an ordinary person, the person can take it with a shraddha. Usually, most of them take with a shraddhas, because you know what, Adityaji, they think, ordinary person thinks, why would anybody lie? Why? Just like before we started this function in a show, like we had some side conversation, like let's be honest kind of conversation. So people wonder, why would somebody lie in the first place? Okay, especially the matters like this where we are trying to understand history, a very deep, the event from a deep antiquity. I mean, it's not immediately connected with anybody's life in the direct sense of, like, it immediately affects your specific interest, unless of course you understand the importance of it. Why somebody would lie? So let's take Mahabharata researchers. So 130 plus, not all of them are around anymore, but let's take a number, maybe 30 are around, and every 30 people have 30 different dates. So obviously, only two possibilities emerge. One is either all of them are wrong, which is very likely possibility. Okay, it's not easy to do historical research and come up with the right date. Or if definitely one of the date is right, since there are these 30 or 130 different dates, only one of them can be correct. Now the question comes, there has to be some criteria, I mean, we have a science with us for a long time, from the time of Nyaya Darshana going back 15,000 plus years. We have a modern science with us for like last 200, 300 years, very well developed philosophy of science. There has to be a criteria, and there is. So why would these people, in all honesty, not look at it? And that's where this term that you hear, let's be honest. Well, we don't have to say it. I mean, if you are in the research, that's what you need to do. But for common man, common individual, what happens is they take it mostly on a shraddha, because they think, and maybe rightfully so, they are not capable of comprehending all the technical arguments from any given discipline of science. I mean, that could be astronomy, archaeology. Many people don't understand how archaeology evidence is found. In fact, that's why you will see people asking, oh, but why can't we find evidence of XYZ? Because they don't understand how archaeoastronomy works. It's not like you ask a question and the evidence shows up. No, you may ask as many questions as you want, and the evidence may not show up at all, even if everything existed. But that is one aspect of it. Second one is to truly understand it. So now, in that context, of course, there is a powerful Arundhati Vasishta observation, Bhishma Nirvan, and Bhishma Nirvan we talked a lot, but Arundhati Vasishta at one point we will go back to it. In fact, I have deliberately not discussed that in length for a reason. But what we are doing in this series is we are discussing various planetary evidence. We have gone through many. I will summarize that at the end. But today we are going to look at planetary conjunctions. In Sanskrit, or in the Indian astronomy, the word that is used is yuti, okay? The coming together of two or more planets. So in that directional sense, conjunction or a yuti is the word. What you are going to find in Mahabharata is when these planets are described, they are, Mahabharata knows the word yuti, or let's assume that they know the word yuti, because the ancient astronomy existed in parallel with the Mahabharata. Why Mahabharata? Even before Mahabharata, to Ramayana times 14,000 years ago, definitely Mahabharata astronomy 7,500 years ago was extremely sophisticated, and even going back 30,000, 40,000 years. So they could have used the right word, and they have used the right word. In fact, in all the planetary conjunctions I'm going to share, not even once they use the word yuti. So one shouldn't artificially start demanding. It's a totally artificial nonsense. Start demanding as if like they need to be within a 1 degree or 2 degrees, which is what sometime when the yuti happens, we talk about it here. So nowhere the word is used yuti, but so here we are going to understand it conjunction, in the sense that they were close by, they were nearby to each other, and they could be seen visibly in the sky, which means they could be seen either before the sunrise or after the sunset. Okay, so they could be on the either side, and but they have to be together. They definitely need to be on the one side of the sun, okay, in order to be called into that description. So let's look at this. So what is the problem? I don't think this is a very tough problem, because conjunctions or yuti or being two or three or multiple planets being together is not such a big deal. So what is a big deal then? Well, even though planets coming together is not a big deal, there are many descriptions of them in a very specific combinations of planets, sometime at a very specific time of the day, very specific day during the 18 days of the war. And the question that anyone, any ordinary person should ask any Mahabharata researcher who claims to have a specific claim, specific year for the Mahabharata war, can all these 11 or more, I'm just going to show you 11, because I'm not aware of many others. There might be few missing. Uh, these planetary combination, can you corroborate for one particular specific your date for the year of Mahabharata war? So not a very tough problem, I would say, but for corroboration is required. So if what is my theory? All astronomy descriptions of Mahabharata text are actual, factual, visual observations of Mahabharata times. Of course, the visual observations of the sky. Once you make the theory, three things emerge. First thing is you exactly know which evidence to collect. So now we said astronomy description. So anything that is astronomy in the entire Mahabharata text becomes the evidence. You have no right to exclude any evidence, and you have no right to include any evidence that is not astronomy in nature. As simple as that. That is the beauty of the statement of a theory. The second thing that happens is it tells you the background knowledge, very simple in this case, Mahabharata text and knowledge of astronomy. The third thing, it tells you, or in fact, you ask the question to the theory statement, is my theory statement stated in such a fashion that the evidence becomes objectively testable, empirically testable? If the statement of the theory is either out of ignorance of the scientific knowledge, scientific acumen, or just out of incompetence. If the statement of the theory is such that the evidence doesn't become empirically testable, then it is not a scientific statement of a theory. It is not a scientific theory. So the third question is, can these conjunctions, in this case conjunctions, be tested? And if we are successful, then what's going to happen? First thing, it will able to explain all these conjunctions. When I say explain, Aditya it may mean in some time a conjunction may not match with the evidence, which is perfectly fine. The science is developed enough, both in the Nyaya Darshana fashion, but also in the modern science fashion, that they can deal with evidence that matches with the theory, and they can deal with the evidence that does not match with the theory. It's not a complex problem. The simple example I'll give you is like a tennis match. So there are two parties playing, and sometime player A makes a point, I mean wins a point, and sometime player B wins a point. There are certain rules. You keep on counting the points. At certain point, the game is over, and you say, okay, well, player A won the game, player B won the game. You go through the games. You finally go to the set. There are rules when you decide when a set is won, and then you can go to the next set. It can be best of 3, it can be best of 6. Very simple. Just the simple logic of how the tennis match is decided is what we are using here. That simple logic doesn't change. So if you have 100 pieces of evidence together, you can always test each of them and decide, well, 90 corroborate my theory, 10 do not corroborate my theory. Okay. So here, the answer, I'm just going to give an answer. The inference we can show that actually these 11 plus conjunction descriptions of Mahabharata do match, do corroborate 5561 BCE. And because we are not wasting time discussing other theories, but I can also tell you, because I have done a Purvapaksha of those theories, that these 11 conjunctions cannot be shown to be true for any other year for the year of Mahabharata war. Anything other than 5561 BC, it is not possible to show. Again, when I say not possible, what do I mean by that? Well, actually, I have tested for all those years, and it can be shown to be decisively false. These conjunctions will not match for those dates. So let's go into it. Now, while discussing some other type of evidence, Aditya, we have discussed some other conjunctions. Now, we did not call them conjunctions because they were described with some additional information, which was even more important than simply calling Saturn and Jupiter were together or something like this. So let's quickly cover those because we have already gone through them. One of them, for example, is what? Three sets actually. That seven planets were in the vicinity of the sun. Seven planets were seen near the sun. Okay, so these are seven planets. Now, we looked at them as three instances of seven planets, and that's when we refer to the existence of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, or awareness of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Why that is required to explain the Mahabharata observations. Okay, and not only that's not sufficient. Just accepting Vyasa knew Uranus, Neptune, Pluto is not enough. But for a specific claimed year, you have to show that the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto were in such a place that along with the visible planets, they could add up to seven and could be seen in the visible sky before sunrise or after sunset. That's very important. Okay. All right. Then the other one we saw is on the 14th day of the war. Again, seven planets attacking the moon. And I have done this, so I'm going fast through them. And they were attacking the moon. Again, we can show this for the 14th day of the war. The third one is on the 17th or 16th day of the war. And again, what do we have? We have, again, seven planets going away from the sun. These same seven planets, essentially, we can show them. Then there is a fourth instance, which we have also covered. This refers to Saturn and Jupiter. Vishakhayo samipasto bruhaspati shanaischaro. And how long? Samvatsaras thainancho graha prajulito vubo. They are shining brightly for a year or more than a year. Who? Bruhaspati and Shanaischaro, that is Jupiter and Saturn, were in the vicinity of Vishakha. Vishakhayo samipasto. And what we discussed is that Vishakha nakshatra is a middle. And it's not true that both these Saturn and Bruhaspati or Saturn and Jupiter are right at Vishakha. No, if they do that, actually, you can find a year like that. Okay, you can find a year like that every 60 years. Every 60 years, you can find a year where both of the planets can be shown to be together in one nakshatra. That's not the problem. But if you show truly in the Vishakha, both of them, then you will not able to explain additional 3-4 observations for each of these planets. So really what is meant is that they are equidistant from a Vishakha on both sides. They are not even on the one side. They are on the equidistance on the both sides. Okay, so Jupiter was near that Mula, Jeshta, Ashada for a year. Saturn was near Hasta, Uttara, Falguni, and Purva Falguni area. And by the time of the year, by the time of the Mahabharat war, Saturn came near Chitra here, and Jupiter moved further close to Uttara, Ashada, and Shravana. So these are the 4 conjunctions that we already discussed. We did not discuss them as a conjunction because we wanted to emphasize something else, like 7 planets near the sun, 7 planets going away from the sun, 7 planets attacking the moon. Which 7 planets was not stated? That is another thing. It was extremely generic as far as the description was concerned. In case of Jupiter and Saturn, the very specific names were given, very specific nakshatra was given. How long they were in that position is also given. The descriptions are so clear that it's referring to the retrograde motions of those planets like Jupiter and Saturn. So done with that. So out of 11, we covered the 4. Now let's look at the 7 that we have not discussed any of them ever until now. For example, on the 16th of October, the first day of the Mahabharata war, a lot of things are happening, okay? But I'm just cleaning it up only for the planetary conjunctions. The very first day, we have got 2 pieces of evidence. The first one refers to, like by describing a war scene, Vyasadeva is describing like their war, for example, was going similar to as if he says Venus and Mars fighting in the sky, like Shukra Angaraka Yoriva. Okay, or in another place, right on the first day description, some particular war between two warriors, he's comparing it with the Angaraka Buddha Viva. Okay, so Angaraka is a Mars, Buddha is a Mercury. Now, can we show them to be in the vicinity of each other? Yeah, absolutely, we can show them to be in the vicinity of each other. So if you look at the Venus and Angarak, or Venus and Mars, you can show them where they were. Venus was like near Uttarashada, and Mars was near Uttarashada and Shravana. So within one nakshatra space, they were there. If you look at the Mars and Mercury, again, if you look at Mars was near Shravana and Mercury was near Purvashada, so they were within a two nakshatra space, and that's what I mean. They are in the vicinity. It's not like they are yuti, like it's not like less than a degree or anything like that. These are the two observations on the first day of the Mahabharata war. Okay, and I'm just showing this in a different fashion. Like with respect to nakshatra, that was our other three-dimensional view. This one is a two-dimensional view. Where were they? So sun is here between, say, Mula and Purvashada, and east of the sun, immediately first was a Mercury, then there was Venus, and then there was Mars. Okay, so the description is Mars and Venus together, and then Mars and Mercury together. So they can be shown to be true. If we go further to the ninth day of the war, there is again a description of Mercury and Venus. Now keep in mind, Mercury and Venus as such are going to be close to the sun. Okay, that is true. So some people might say, so what's the big deal? I mean, anybody can show Mercury and Venus to be together. Well, I would like to challenge them, although this is true that they are inner planets, usually close to the sun. Guess what? If somebody is claiming a specific year, but for that year and during those particular 18 days and say ninth day of the war, if the Venus is to the east of the sun, with this right now, what happens? This is sun's position, and both of them are to the east of the sun. Okay, so Mercury is on the east, and so is Venus. But what if Venus or one of the two planets is on the east side of the sun, other one is on the west side of the sun? Then they cannot be used in a description like they both were fighting, both were together, both could be seen, anything like this. So although it's not a very unusual scenario, for a specific claimed year, you can use this evidence to falsify, just like I'm using it to corroborate 5561 BC. It can also be used to either corroborate, but also falsify. Hold on, this is not happening. That claim doesn't look right, so that can be done too. Let's go next. So this is again a two-dimensional picture where they were. Then you come to the 10th day of the war, when Bhishma fell down in the battle, and from that day he was on the bed of arrows until the day of winter solstice, more than 92 days. That's what Mahabharata text tells us, which means the timing of the Mahabharata war was the first part of the Sharad Rutu. As simple as that. We can see this here. If this is the day of winter solstice, we go back 2 months of Hemanta Rutu, another month of second month of Sharad Rutu. So that's 60 days plus 30 days is 90 days. And we have to go more than 92 plus 10 days the first day of the war. So the war occurred during the first half of Sharad season. But just back to our specific observation. Here in this, on the 10th day, the observation that I want to share, I mean, there are many other observations, but this is not so much about the conjunction of planets. And we will do another session on the entire moon evidence, the phases and positions of the moon through the 18 days of the war. I'm just picking one from that, which is how the moon was rising on the 10th day of the war. And people will say, what's the big deal? I mean, moon is rising every day sometime. The beauty is the such a particular description, detailed description that Vyasa has done for the rising of a moon, as simple, trivial thing as rising of a moon. What he's saying is the moon was rising on the 10th day of the war with its pointed ends facing downward. That is, that verse is saying, Apasavyam grahascha krura lakshmanam nishakaram Avakshirascha Bhagavan Uttishthata Chandrama. How it's rising? Avakshiraksha, by putting its pointed ends downwards on the 10th day of the war. And what does that tell you? Anyone with a very basic knowledge of astronomy knows that refers to the Shukla Paksha, okay, or Shuddha Paksha. That is the timing between the Amavasya and the full moon. And it's the 10th day of the war. Okay, so it's between Amavasya and the full moon. So anyone who is claiming that the Mahabharata war began on the Margashirsha Shukla Ekadashi or Shukla Ekadashi, simply not true. That's what the Mahabharata evidence is saying. Okay, uh, enough evidence to show that it started on the Kartika Amavasya, but whether somebody, I mean, we are not discussing that, but the 10th day of the war cannot be the part of a Vadya Paksha or Krishna Paksha. It has to be Shukla Paksha, and this evidence proves that. This is what I'm showing. So what happens is sun is here. Right now, that is the angle. When it goes straight to like 180-degree opposite, by the time it gets to here, 1 or 2, we will have a full moon day. So this is a Shukla Paksha. That's important. Let's move forward. 28th October. Now, this is the 13th day of the war when Abhimanyu was killed. Okay. And there are many descriptions related to the full moon like moon, the moon as if there was a eclipse. Upapluktam yathasomam. There is no eclipse on this day, but as if there was an eclipse. Actually, what? From a Tithi perspective, it is the day of Margashirsha Shukla 12. Now, Adityaji, I'm bringing up this subject because this can be the reason why somebody thought, and there is one reference in the Mahabharata which is interpreted or misinterpreted to say that actually actually two eclipses happen within a span of 13 days. It has been shown time and time again that mathematically that is impossibility. It just cannot happen. However, what could happen, of course, is if you keep 13 days in between, so first day, then you count 13, and the next day, then the eclipse can happen if that is what is meant. But here, the words that you see below, upapluptam yathasomam, what actually, if you can find for 5561 BC at least, is that the position of the moon on this day was coinciding with the Rahu. So therefore, Vasudev, it appears, has said, oh, as if like the eclipse happened, because moon is at the position of a Rahu. So that is very, very fascinating. But of course, we also have a description to Mercury and Venus, okay, in the context of a moon. And again, you can show Mercury and Venus to be there on one side of the sun. So it corroborates. And this is just again, two-dimensional view of that exactly same thing. Let's go further to 15th day of the war, 30th October. And again, you have a mention of Buddha Bhargava. It's very interesting to notice how these names are used. Before it was like Buddha and Shukra, some other name was used. Now, in this case, Buddha Bhargava again means the same thing. Bhargava in this case is referring to the Shukra, like a Bhrigu's planet. Again, they were together. In one day, nothing is going to change. So that also gets corroborated. Again, two-dimensional view of it. Let's get to the last day of the war, the 18th day of the Mahabharata war. What do we see in terms of conjunctions on this day? Something very amazing reference. This one was brought to my attention by another good researcher. She writes wonderful novels based on our history, our itihasa, Sai Swarupa Ayarji. And when she was doing a detailed study of the narrations of the 18 days of the war, I made a request to her and she kindly agreed. I said, if you come across any astronomy evidence that I might have missed, I mean, she wouldn't know what I might have missed. I said, if you come across any astronomy evidence during this 18-day war descriptions that she was doing a detailed study of, please bring it to my attention. And lo and behold, she did bring to my attention few, which actually I already shared just now, some of the conjunctions. But Adityaji, I'm telling you this story for a reason. When she brought this to my attention, she said, oh, on the 18th day of the war, there is this description of Shalya and Yudhishthir fighting, and Vasudev is comparing that with a moon fighting with the Saturn. First thing, I found that bit odd. And those of you who are paying attention, you might find that bit odd too. In the sense, for most part, if you notice, all the conjunctions that I shared, they are between planets. Seven planets, seven planets, seven planets, Saturn and Jupiter, Mercury and Mars, Mercury and Venus, Venus and Mars. I mean, those are the descriptions that you are seeing so far. Suddenly, there was this description of a moon and a Saturn. And when she brought that reference to my attention, I said, okay, I don't think this description is going to match the 5561 BC. But as I said, just like a tennis match, that's not a problem. If you have a scientific acumen, all that you do, if you have a total evidence, you count the evidence that matches with your theory, you count the evidence that does not match with your theory, and you put them in a two piles. Just like in a tennis match, we say 6-0, 6-1, 6-2, and still the guy with a six side is the winner, right? So I thought, okay, I'll just check it. I just made a note to my mind, I can say myself, that I'll go test it. But I was thinking, I don't know why Vyasa would have said that. And I don't think that's going to match for 5561 BC. I was not visualizing why comparison of a Saturn and Moon would be made. To my pleasant surprise, when I came home and went on the mathematical calculations plus simulator, guess what? On the 18th day of the war, the moon has already gone through many phases, like 18-day travel from Amavasya to now where moon is. And at night, okay, I forgot, the moon will pop up first. Let's say moon will rise a bit late because it's like 2 days after the Purnima. And then after some time, Saturn also comes in the sky. And guess what? So maybe moon comes around, I'm just giving approximate number, like say 10, 11 o'clock or so, 10, 9 o'clock, whatever, somewhere there. Then after some time, the Saturn shows up in the sky. And for the entire night and until sunrise, the only two graha in the Indian system, you can say, in the sky on the 17th night, and that's actually true for 18th night also, by the way. So it doesn't matter which observation Vyasa was using, the observation of the 17th night of sun, of the moon and Saturn together, or 18th night, doesn't matter, because they both nights, they were the only two planets at night, and possibly meaning, and almost throughout the night until sunrise, that were in the sky. I was fascinated. I had thought, I just thought I'll check it and I'll say, no, that observation does not match. Out of 300 plus, 290 do match for my theory, but there are 5-10 observations which do not match. To my surprise, actually, this matches very perfectly. The next thing I did is I went on and just checked like a 30 plus other claims to see what this one comes up. And I would encourage our viewers to actually check that. You will find not many claims, actually majority of the claims do not show this situation. A simple observation of Saturn and moon as a comparison with registered also would support 5561 BC, but sufficient to falsify many of the other claims. Just this one observation. How fascinating. And in a linear fashion, just so that people see why they were the only two planets or graha in the night. So this is the scenario, two-dimensional scenario for the last day of the war. So moon is here and Saturn is here. In fact, if you go one more day further, the moon is going to move, even get closer to the Saturn. That's what I meant. Whether you take 17th night or 18th night, doesn't matter. Okay. All right. So that is that. Oh, there is a one more. And on the same day, but during the daytime, there is a mention of another observation on the 18th day of the war. And that verse comes like this. Again, there is something very fascinating, Adityaji, about this verse. That verse I had missed for 10 plus years. Okay, I had not found that in 2009. It is not in my the Saturn and Moon. It's not in my 2011 book. I was not looking at planetary evidence anyways in my Bhishma Nirvana book, but I had not found it even then when I published my Bhishma Nirvana book. It only came to light when Sai Swarupa Ayarji mentioned it to me in last couple of years when she was doing the study. Now, so that was the fascinating thing about that observation on the last day. This is a on second observation of the planetary conjunction on the last day and 18th day of the war. What does it say? Bhrugu Suno Dharaputro Shashi Jena Samanvito. Three planets were together, okay, and they were seen in front of Charamam Pandu Putranam Purastat Sarva Bhubajam. They were seen, or they were available, or they were present in front of Yudhishthir. Yudhishthira is, this is a morning time description. Yudhishthira is fighting from the west side. Kauravas are facing the west direction. Pandavas are facing the east direction. Last day of the war. And obviously, when the sun is there, you will not even easily see the planets. Actually, you can see the planets depending on the conditions, but you are not going to easily see them, let's say. So you might have seen it at night. That is perfectly fine. But when the description is given, they were actually also present in the sky, in the eastern sky, and thus right in front of Yudhishthira. That's not the only fascinating part, Adityaji. Additional fascinating part, because this also allows us to have some insight into the critical edition, which is a phenomenal work by Bhandarkar Research, Oriental Research Institute. But this observation is a good one to also show its limitations. It also shows the limitations of critical edition, but it also shows the power of 5561 BC. I mean, how fascinating. So this verse, that the three planets, Bhrugu Suno, Dharaputro, Shashi Jena, Samanvito. So three. Bhrugu Suno, by the way, the Adityaji, let me ask you a question. What is, for Putra, what is the word in English?
Sun.
Sun. Okay. If anyone wonders where that came from, the answer is right here. Of course, we have the second word Dharaputro. Okay. So the son of a Dhara, son of a Prithvi, that is there. But the first one is a Bhrugu Suno, son of Bhrugu. Okay. Sunu, Bhrugu Sunu. So that son is also coming from Sanskrit, by the way. And some people are just going to roll their eyes. Oh, come on. Is this true? Well, go and look at the etymology. Bhrugu Suno, that is referring to the Venus. Dharaputro, the son of Prithvi in the Indian astronomy, that refers to Mars. Okay. And Shashi Jeno, again, that also means the same thing, son of a moon, which is referred to Mercury. So here we have a Venus, Mars, and Mercury, Samanvito together. And in front of Yudhishthira, Charamam Panduputranam, Purastat Sarvabhu Bhujam. They were just there in front of him on the 18th day of the war. Do we see them? Absolutely. I've shown you those three arrows. They are all in the vicinity of each other. Mars here, Mercury here, Venus here on the 2nd November 5561 BC. Or if you want to look at the three-dimensional view, again, I have not shown the sun, but sun is right here, around 16 or so. And you see Mercury around Shravana Nakshatra. You see Venus, that is around, Dhanishta, and Mars around Dhanishta and Shatataraka. Just one, not even a gap of nakshatra in between, just three consecutive nakshatras, they are there. Okay. What is important? In critical edition, they have, based on their criteria, they have not included this verse into the critical edition. The beauty of critical edition is it does not throw away the verses that they don't want to consider part of a cumulative samvita. So they write it in the footnote or they write it in the appendix. So they have kept the verse, and that is a great job they have done. But based on their criteria, as if this verse doesn't belong to the mainstream narration, what you want to call it, guess what? These narrations have not come out of a blue. They are there for a reason. Even when some of the interpolations that have come into the Mahabharata are also for a reason. Because maybe the commentator who was writing on a Mahabharata at specific time, he or she could not make sense of what is written in Mahabharata, because they are also observing the sky of their own times, not the time of Mahabharata. And they said, well, why is Mahabharata saying this? If I see something in the sky, and sometimes they modified the statements of a Mahabharata or added their statements. So it is such a beautiful book to study for that reason. So this line was not included by Bhandarkar Oriental Critical, their critical edition. What I have shown is something that is not even included by Bhandarkar can also be shown to be perfectly in agreement with the scenario of 5561 BCE and the last day, 2nd November 5561 BCE. So these three planets were indeed together. That's, I think I'm done. Quickly, if you want to know more, people want to read this. If you are in India, these are the books. That's how the covers look. And the historic Rama is exactly same book as 12,209, different titles, same content for India. I should also mention in the current package, which was a Ganesha package, they're extending it for until Diwali. I don't know exactly what date. So you can take advantage of this offer if you would like to. But besides my books, there is a wonderful book on tearing down Aryan invasion nonsense by Dr. Shiva Shastri. There is a wonderful book, even a good read for all family members sitting together or even young readers, is the Shitala by Mitra Desai. Okay, it talks about a fascinating journey of the methods and science of vaccination going from India to outside to Europe. And then Mangesh Anaukar, he's a IITian, and his book on the last book, you can read the whole title there, Pangea to India. It is a provocative book. It is a book that it's not just simple information that you digest and say, oh, thank you, I did not know that. That book intention is that it makes you think and takes you to do more research of your own. So if you're just looking for some encyclopedia type of thing, that's not the book. In fact, none of these five books fall into that encyclopedia category. It's not simply telling you when India became free from the British colonial rule, like 15 August 1947. No, these all books will make you think, will in charge you to do your own research, do your own studies. So that is the objective behind them. And of course, if you are outside India, then as far as at least my books goes, that's true for all the other books too, by the way. They are also available on Amazon, like by Shiva Shastri, Mangesh Anaukar, or Mitra Desai. And my books are also available around the world on Amazon. So quickly to do summarize, how rich is the planetary evidence? Extremely rich of a Mahabharata. And only 1 year that you can match is 5561 BC. In the previous episodes, we have looked at the Vakri motion of the planets, three instances. We looked at the retrograde motion. We have looked at the 7 planets doing something with the sun and a moon. We last time looked at the planets giving a pida, okay, affliction to Nakshatra Rohini, 3 instances. Last time we also discussed planets attacking or coming in the vicinity of a specific nakshatra. We saw that in the case of Saturn and Jupiter. Saturn coming near nakshatra Bhaga, Jupiter coming near nakshatra Jeshta. They were therefore staying there for a long time. That's the definition of akramya, coming in contact, coming in the vicinity. And today we looked at 7 conjunctions that we had not discussed before. Additional 4 conjunctions. They are also conjunctions, but we did not cover them in the conjunctions because it has something additional information like 7 planets, and therefore we had to discuss Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. So I did not want to combine them. Or one instance of Jupiter and Saturn in the vicinity of a Vishakha for a year and in retrograde, because retrograde was the important emphasis of it, or the word Vakra versus retrograde. Therefore I did not include it in the conjunction before, or treated it separately. So that 4 plus 7, total of 11 conjunctions. That's what we have. Quick summary. So Mahabharata describes 35 plus planetary descriptions. We looked at Vakri, there are 3 instances. We looked at retrograde, there are 4 instances. We looked at 7 planets doing something to sun or the moon, like in the near sun, going away from the sun, attacking the moon. So 3 instances of it. And the assumption of Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, or Vyasadeva knowing Uranus, Neptune, Pluto is very valid. Otherwise, you will not able to explain those 7 planets. Very important to remember, just because you are willing to accept the existence of Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, that by itself is not a guarantee that the evidence can be corroborated for a specific claimed year for the Mahabharata war. Based on my study and based on my Purva Paksha of other people's evidence or other people's claims, I can say with the confidence that it can only corroborate 5561 BC. Last time we looked at Akramya, so near a specific nakshatra, we had two instances of Jupiter and Saturn doing it. And Pida, we had three instances. First case, Sun and Moon together afflicting Rohini. Second time, Saturn afflicting Rohini. And the third was Jupiter afflicting Rohini on the 17th day of the war. And today, quickly, we looked at the four existing conjunctions, like 7 planets plus Saturn and Jupiter going retrograde. And we also discussed 7 additional conjunctions of planets, sometime 2, most of the time 2 planets, but also at times 3 planets, like the last day of the war, when Venus and Mars and Mercury were seen together in the sky. In the eastern part of the sky in the morning, when Yudhishthira was fighting, and in front of Yudhishthir, which is to say in the eastern direction. Very rich evidence. We still are left with eclipses and a Tyriac rising of Mercury. Okay, so up to potentially 3 eclipses, and I'll tell you why I say 3. Usually only actually there are 2, but I'll explain why I'm saying possibly 3. And the Tyriac rising of Mercury. And if I have covered everything, then I would say then we will be. So next time we can, Aditya cover these 2, and then we are done with the planetary evidence. Very, very fascinating evidence. I'm going to stop sharing. And important to know that this only points to 5561 BC.
Oh, what an amazing. And this series is opening the eyes of so many people, including mine, that how the planetary facts which are mentioned, which actually help us. And believe me, this is the ancient science, not today's science. Would you like to add anything?
So what we would like to do is, so next time or whenever next we do, we will cover the eclipses, because eclipses is also graha in the Indian
Correct.
context, is
Correct.
sun and moon
Rahu
as a
Ketu.
graha. We will look at the specific locations. We will talk about why eclipse evidence, as much as people get so excited or rather overexcited about eclipse evidence. And eclipse evidence is great if you are looking at last 2000 years. But if you want to go beyond in deep antiquity, then eclipse evidence is not very useful.
Not very useful.
Okay, and the reason is the prediction of the position of the moon is the hardest. Okay, I mean, it was confusing all the astronomers like Kepler and Galileo and Newton and Copernicus and everyone. So we will do that, and then we will look at phases and positions of the moon through the 18 days of the war. And at some point, we will visit the simplest and the strongest observation of the Mahabharata, the Arundhati Vasishtha observation, and all the chaos and all the confusion, all the delusion and deliberate nonsense that goes around that observation. So we will go one by one, and we will talk about the nonsense, but we'll also talk about the beauty and sense of Arundhati Vasishtha observation. So that's it.
Vidya goes together.
Yes, there you go. Ishopanishad.
Thank you all the viewers for joining. You have a lot of questions, and it is practically Nilesh has answered all of them in previous shows. So there is a separate playlist called 5561 BC on Sattology. You can see all of it over there. And if you have any comments, you can ask him directly. Sometimes he replies. When he gets time, he replies, or provided your question is genuine. So,
yes.
So thank you all for joining, and namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.